Hello, welcome to Creating Portland. I'm your host, Pearson Kunz, and on this podcast, I'll be interviewing progressive creators who are using their art to shape the culture of our city and beyond. I hope you enjoy this episode of Creating Portland. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. We are here with another exciting guest, and his name is Troy Mathews. He is a dual citizen of the United States and Canada, like myself, so I'm excited to speak with a fellow Canadian. He is an arts educator who currently lives, works, and creates in Portland, Oregon. Troy graduated from the Pacific Northwest College of Art in 2016 with a bachelor's in fine arts and focused on painting and curation. And then while getting his undergraduate degree, he also started a graduate degree in art and teaching, which he attained in 2018 from Vermont College of Fine Arts. And I'm just so excited to get into his art with him, because when you look at this stuff, I mean, this might sound like a novice take, but it takes my breath away. It made me gasp the moment I saw it. And then it also made me just look in closer because it's so detailed, but just the overall image, breathtaking. So anyway, I'm excited to really get into this with Troy, and welcome to the pod.
I am so grateful for being here. This is amazing. I've been listening to your podcast for a while since I found out I was going to be on the show, and I'm a huge fan. I hope to become your number one fan. Oh, wow. By the way, I found out that I'm a number one fan of someone else's podcast. Okay. I'm like, how does that happen? But I'm looking forward to continuing my subscription to what you're doing here. This is fantastic.
Yes, well, we already feel the love today, so we're excited to have our number one fan on the pod. Well, Troy, let's start with the big, broad question and get into it. But how are you, Troy Mathews, with your art, creating our city of Portland?
I would say slowly and in the background. Most social changes, you have a lot of people like Martin Luther King and Gandhi that have gone out and take the spotlight, but there's a lot of people that are supporting them in the background. And I think that's my role. It's not to be in the spotlight. And thank you for giving me a spotlight today. But it is to give people space and opportunity to showcase their art in our wonderful city, and to try to, with my whatever power I have, whatever voice I have, whatever position I have, to do what I can to make our city, and not just our city, but our world, a better place for everybody. And so that goes through education, that goes through voting, that goes through marching in the streets, that goes through, creating outlets, giving awards out to people who support the LGBTQ+A community, to create this place to make it, a place that you can express yourself. And not only that, a safe place that you can walk down the street in the middle of the night and not have to worry about that someone's behind you, whether you're female or male. Just being out and being a presence in our space where we live, whether it's, the Pearl District, whether it's up by PSU, or whether it's down on Everett Street, down in the heart of where, a lot of poverty is happening. Just being a good example of wherever I'm at to those people. And so whether it's my art or me, I can't separate me from my art. And so being able to be that kind of person that someone can be like, I feel safe around them. I feel like I could trust them. I can go talk to them. I need help. How can I get help from that person? Just trying to be that person. And often I fail at that, but it's something to strive for every single day to help make everybody's day a little bit better, because there shouldn't be, I was talking with a group of students. I teach middle school.
Me too.
And they just thought it was bizarre that women feel afraid to go out at night. That idea. And with everything that happened in London right now, with the lady getting brutally murdered by the police, Like that shouldn't be a part of our society in 2021. That's like an 1800s type of thing with Jack the Ripper. Like that doesn't have to be our society right now. And so, giving people permission to think new and question and imagine otherwise is my role as an artist and as an art educator and an educator. Just being like, how would you want this world to be? What would you like it to be as we go forward? Because all these boomers are going to die out, and who's going to be left with the bag? Me. And I'm already old compared to my students who are 11 and 12, and they're already like super woke on this idea of climate change and gender equality and all these other things. And I can't wait to live in their world.
Right.
Like, I'm like, my generation, like, we're slow to the game. Like, these kids are on it, and I can't wait to live in their world.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I am also a middle school educator, which we should definitely get into after the pod. But yeah, I think kids are such a cool gauge of, like, if a kid thinks it's weird, it's probably like systematically weird, and we should definitely rethink the whole thing. Like when you describe like, oh, it's weird that women feel uncomfortable walking home at night, like that's a huge problem then, if that is coming from these innocent children. Yes, I just love how you are sort of taking a philosophical approach to creating Portland and how your existence is creating Portland. And some other artists have talked about that too, how just like being representative in a space is part of creating it. And I like how intentional you are about that every day and in all the different spaces that you occupy.
Well, if I'm not intentional about it, I definitely get parents give feedback being like, hey, you said that? Yeah. Really? You said that? And so like, there's no line between like my personal life and my teaching, and there's no line between my art and my teaching. Like, I definitely tell my students, like, I'm not here to make you all social justice activists. I want to help you get to where you want to be as a creator, but this is where my art is. And, if that's something you want to fall in line with, you can. But like, I'm not pushing you that way. Your art is to express you as a person, your ideas and your thoughts. And so hopefully, working in middle school is not necessarily like the thankful job that it is at high school or elementary, but there's a lot of like gray cells being developed there where they're developing who they are as human beings, and then who they're going to be in high school and who they're going to go out in the future. And so like, I think, giving them the help and the permission to be like, hey, you are you, be you. Like, I don't need another carbon copy of me. I don't need you to be your parents. I need you to be you. And you're going to benefit the world in ways we've never seen because you were yourself. And so.
Yes. So exciting.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just, like, it's hard as an educator because, like, we have, all these things that are, like, standardized and stuff. But, like, when we think about the human, like, and the state of education, like, what education is now is not what it's going to be in 10 years as we move to, like, more skill-based understanding and as robots take over jobs and things like that. I think, like, it's going to be about who you are and, like, trying to develop how you're going to be a good human or a good person, not just human. Like, how are you going to be a global citizen when, borders are just made up and birds fly through them?
Right.
Like, how are you going to go out and make the world a better place? Because the secret of life is, whether you believe in the Bible, whether you believe in anything, like, it is to make the world a better place for others. Like, we're caretakers while we're here, whether it's the environment, whether it's like the homeless person sleeping on the street. Like, the message is take care of each other, and how do you make it a better place for everybody? And I'm trying to do that with my art, not necessarily like in your face, I have all the answers, but at least give you some questions to, like, imagine things otherwise. Because, like, just because we did it 100 years this way doesn't mean we need to continue doing it. Like, I got a phone in my pocket that allows me to do everything I need to just from my phone. Like, that never happened like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Like, you couldn't do what we're doing right now. And so we need to imagine otherwise and see things differently than we have been. Because, like, make America great again. Well, okay, if you look at that, had outhouses.
Right.
People were pooping in their backyard and they had to walk to it. We have flushing toilets now. Let's imagine America different. Let's,
Even
try to
better.
make things better
Yeah.
for everybody.
Totally. And so, okay, I want to get into that too with your art is like, what does that process look like for you? How do you ask those questions and how do you convey those questions through your pieces?
Well, I want to start because like I just gave this speech to my kids
Mm.
today. I was telling them like I just had a brand new fresh group of sixth graders come into the classroom and they're like, "Who are you?"
Yes.
Like I don't know if I should trust you. Like, how do I know you're the art person that's going to help me? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, go through the slideshow. I'm Mr. Matthews. I do this. I do that. And like when I was in college at Pacific Northwest College of Arts, I was just making fan art. I was
Mm.
making like basketball players and NBA players. And I will say this, I like right now I'm wearing an LA Dodgers sweatshirt, and that's just because like not that I love the Dodgers, it's just I love teamwork.
Mm.
And so like every time a student sees me with a shirt on that's a sports team, it's like this is a team that does well with teamwork. I support teamwork
Mm.
because like there's no individual, especially in art. Like I got a supplier, whether it's the person at Blick, whether it's someone who's making canvases, whether it's the gallery owner, whether it's the register, like every person that I come into is a team, part of my team, whether I know it or not. And so like I try to encourage my students to think like, you know, sports is competitive, but art is even more competitive.
Mm.
It's probably the most competitive thing you could ever be a part of, even though it doesn't feel like it. But like you're going to have all these people that are part of your team. And so like I was trying to show them and like, and I think your intro of me was fantastic. It was like, I just need to get that sound clip, put it in and be like, Mr.
Yes, a little background
Matthews.
music. Love that.
Exactly. But the idea came from, well, I was in my sophomore year or junior year of Pacific Northwest College of Art, and a teacher just called me out on my BS, and he's
Mm.
like, "Are you going to continue doing this fan art? Like, it can take you far, but like, when you die, are you going to care about this?"
Mm.
And so I ripped everything off the wall. I spent an afternoon crying on a pile of paintings, just like, and he's just like asked me like, "What is the authentic you?
Mm.
What is authentically Troy Mathews? What is authentically you? What is something that you would like die on to say that this is what you care about?" And so like I couldn't paint for a week. Honestly, I couldn't like pick up a paintbrush. Like I just went into the classes and sat there.
Mm.
Just like, what is authentically me? I don't know. I can't do this. And like why am I spending so much on student loans to go to the school when I don't know what I'm doing here for?
Right.
And then, you know, slowly through the process of painting and just being like giving up my idea of what I wanted to look like and come to what it needed to be,
Mm.
like I found myself going towards social issues. I found myself being drawn to things that were unjust in our society, that like just boil up in me and make me feel so much anger and hate and like just like I chipped my tooth thinking about something that was injustice because I was clenching so
Oh
hard
my god.
because like I couldn't do anything to solve it.
Mm.
And like I live with that and it just goes around my head because I'm not like a neurotypical learner. I have a difference. I'm dyslexic and a little bit ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And so like things just roll around in my head and I can't let go of it until I do something about it. And so I just put it on canvas. And I was like, I'm just going to let this rest on canvas. And so a lot of my paintings is for my mental health.
Mm.
So like I don't have a lot of shows. Most of the stuff is just in my studio on a wall and I'm doing it for me and possibly future generations. But like the idea is that I just need to get this idea out of my head so I can have a moment of peace because it is upsetting me so much because it's not right. It is discriminatory. It is predatory. It is not necessarily just or about equality or equity. And so you were talking about the other earlier about how my material is.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, and if I'm talking too much,
No.
please stop me.
This
Because
is the
I
point of the
do have a hand.
podcast. You gotta go off. Yes.
I do ramble. I do ramble. And my students will tell you that. They'll be like, he's 45 minutes into a 30-minute class. What is going on with this
Oh
guy?
god.
Um, but the idea that like I switched from having things on canvas
Mm.
because I thought of it as precious to just putting it on drop cloth and having these giant paintings working as like an idea in a sketchbook. The idea that you're working out some problem. And so I'm just working out these problems on a large scale and then possibly showing them to people to not give them the answers, but spark the question of, well, why,
Mm-hmm.
or how come, or what could be. And so, like, there's a lot of clues in there. Like, it's very easy for me to just be like, hit you over the head and just be like, look at this, and this is the
Mm-hmm.
answer, and this is the reason, and this is the why. And you see that a lot on TikTok. You see that a lot on Instagram, especially with social justice things. And my idea is not necessarily like I've done that. And my partner, Amanda, she's like, why are you trying to yell from the train to people on the platform to get on the train that's already moving?
Oh, interesting metaphor.
And she's like, why don't you just, talk to the people on the train? Like, they're all going the same direction as you. Why worry about those, QAnon people? Why are you worrying about all these other people just because you want them to catch up with you? Like, why not just focus on the people who are with you?
Mm.
And so, like, I think that's where I'm at right now. But like with my paintings, I want to open it up to anybody to just be like, why did he make it? How come? What could happen otherwise from it? And like, there should be enough clues in there visually with the title, with the songs that go along with it, like to give people the answers that they will hopefully find for themselves. Because learning isn't about me regurgitating something to you that I learned and then having you regurgitate it back to me. It is really like you owning that education.
Mm.
And so if I can give you as many opportunities to be like, oh, maybe I want to, Google search that title and see what that means, or maybe I want to like, who is this person that this artist chose to do a whole giant portrait of? Why would I want to look into that? And like, what does it have to do with civil rights? What does it have to do with all these other
Mm-hmm.
things? Maybe they'll find those answers for themselves and maybe they'll come to the same conclusions. But if not, we have a starting point to have a conversation with. Like, I met a guy once in tech. He just handed me his business card, and his business card just had his name on it. And I was like, so how do I get a hold of you? And he's like, if you don't know that's the 2000s and how to get a hold of somebody just by searching their name, I don't want to do business with you. And I think there's a new level that we need to hold people accountable to be like, hey, you're either with us or you're on the platform.
Yeah.
And get people to like, like there's so much that I can do of hand holding and trying to get people to come forward. But at some point, like they got to do it themselves. And it takes a lot of creative energy for me and everybody else to be like, I need to educate you. I need to walk you through the path and get you on the steps. Like I've been doing this a long time and you're new to this and I don't want to offend you, but like I got other things to do.
Yeah.
Like there's other issues that I need to jump on and get a part of and use my creative energy and my force for that. And so, like I'm doing my part educating elementary students, but I don't need to educate their parents.
Mm.
Like I need to like pause and just be like, okay, here's a break. Like if you have a problem with that, that's fine. Like that is your right and your view. But like my classroom is inclusive. We celebrate everybody, no matter where you came from, who you are, what gender, sexuality. I'm here to support you. I'm here for you. We have a giant line in the sand. Like if you want to think about the old days and outhouses, sure, that's you. But like we're in the 21st century. We're like using Twitch and streaming and listening to music and hanging out and going into virtual realities. Like if you want to be part of us, you got to catch up to
Right.
us. And like I think at some point as a society, we're just got to draw a line in the sand and be like, hey, like you guys know DC
Oh
Comic books,
yes, yes, yes.
Superman, Batman, those things. Yeah. They had a 0 year in like 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there, where they just said, like, everything before this is just old. We don't like it anymore.
Oh,
And we're just starting
oh, I
over.
love that.
And I think we need to do that as a society too. Be like, this is our zero
Mm,
year, especially with the
right?
pandemic, and these are the things we're no longer standing for. Like, you're either with us or you're against us, and you can be the old way, but that's not part of our canon. That's not part of our continuity. That's not part of our
Mm,
story. That was the old way of thinking, and that's from Mesopotamia when people were didn't have iPhones and communication,
mhm,
but we are starting here, and this is where that new generation takes off, and these are the things we stand for. These are the things that are okay. It's not culture, cancel culture, it's
mm.
accountability. You say something, you mean it, you stand by it, whether you post a meme, whatever. Like, you stand for that
Right.
thing, whether you just forward it. It's you. That's what you're saying that you're okay with, and if you're not okay with it, then don't post it. And
Wow.
so
Okay. Yes. I mean, we're talking about this time as a cultural reset. And like for you, that is a
mhm,
true reset everything. Let's start from scratch in a way that is way different, which I totally agree. Like, I mean, we're talking abolition really came into the conversation this summer. And it's like, that's kind of the level we need to get to of just like totally
mhm.
resetting a lot of these systems and problematic ideas we have in place that are, like you're saying, thousands and thousands of years old. These ideas of hierarchy, of people, of worthiness, of,
Mhm.
yeah, interesting. Interesting.
Well, let me ask you a
Okay.
question, and this is open to both you and CJ. How do you define culture?
Mm. Oof. I did not expect to be put on the spot. But for me, culture is just like the exchange of ideas and values. And so
Okay.
that often. Ooh, and CJ, our producer, who is not being recorded but contributing, is saying that culture is what you want it to be. And yeah, I mean, we
Mm,
are culture, we create culture. So if we don't like the culture we have, we are just as powerful and capable of shifting it and changing it and making it whatever it is. And for me, culture comes out in art and comes out in what we are
mhm.
creating more quickly and more visibly than the after effects of those things. Um,
Right. I will just jump in here
yeah.
with Stephen Carpenter at Penn State. He once said that culture is just how we do things around here.
Oh yes, I heard this
What are we
definition.
okay with?
Yeah.
And so, like, what are we okay with doing around here? And whether it is racist stuff or whether it is promoting other cultures and communities, like, that is what our culture is built up by, what we
Right.
accept and what we deny. And so maybe as we go forward, we get to choose that. Like, we don't have to be locked into what our parents said. We don't have to lock into what the past generation
Hmm.
said. It's just about what we're okay with. And whoever has the most votes in America seems to be the one that leads what culture
Hmm.
is. So, I mean, boomers are dying every day. So I think,
Yeah.
especially the ones that don't wear masks,
Oh,
I think,
the
ugh,
shade.
hey, I'm a political artist. So what I'm saying is, as culture goes forward, we get to choose
Right.
those things. We get to, and so, like, as we say, like, this is all right. You know, we're okay with this. We want to support this. Like, more of that will come. And as we shut doors, we can close those doors and be fine with it, and just be like, we're never gonna focus on this again because we're not okay with
Totally.
that.
And choosing not to change
Well,
is just as much of a choice. And choosing to continue these racist ideas, these sexist ideas, these whatever ideas is also making a choice that
mhm,
this is how we do it around here. So until we
right.
shift that, what we're doing around here, it's just going to keep being what it is because it has no incentive to not be that.
Right, and I tell my students that, like, if you see something racist, you see something sexualist, anything that's just anything
Mhm.
ist, even capitalists, you could shut it down with, this is not how we do things around
Yes.
here. Like it's just a simple message to be like, that's not what we tolerate. And so like giving them the power and the choice to be able to be like, I can say yes or no to this. And like we talk about like TikTok and like whether you like something, that is saying yes to
Yeah.
that. Or if you watch the whole thing through, that is saying yes to that. And so educating people being like, you have you can say, no, I don't want to
Yep.
watch this. I don't support this. And I think, that gives a lot of people power that they didn't know they had before, especially younger
Mm,
people, because like, those likes and those views and those comments turn into capital at
right.
some point.
And shifting
And
the
so
culture.
just making people aware of that. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, this is a riveting, but let's transition a little bit away from this and focus it more on your experience in Portland specifically, because that's what I'm curious about on this
Hmm.
podcast is what is working for you about the Portland art scene, and then what is maybe some areas of improvement or things that we should not be doing around here in this cultural conversation.
Well, I think Portland has a wonderful art scene. We are on almost the same parallel line with Manhattan.
Oh.
And so whether it's a vibe or whether it's a frequency, like Portland has an amazing cultural
Mhm.
cachet. And I've heard some of your other artists talk about like representing Portland. And when you say are from Portland, a lot of doors open up. And I think that's fantastic. And when I was more capitalistic, I had this idea because Portland doesn't have a luxury tax.
Mm.
We're one of the few states, there's like two or three that have no luxury tax. If you set up a gallery here in Portland, this is for anybody can take this idea. I was hogging it for a long time, but anybody could set up a gallery here, make some contacts with New York, with LA, and then be like, hey, I will sell your art that's in LA in my space in
Without.
Portland, and you'll avoid the luxury tax and you can pocket it. And then your client just has to have their art on display in Portland for, I don't know, it's like 6 months to a year. And once that's on display, then it can avoid the luxury tax and it can go to their house and they sell it, like $15,000
Wow.
to $1 million, depending on the price. That's how we got the Francis Bacon at the Portland Art Museum when the casino owner owned it at Wynn. He purchased it at auction, but had it at Portland Art Museum. And because it went to the Portland Art Museum and stayed for a certain period of time, which you have to look at because haven't looked at what that statue
Mhm.
is again, but because of that, they avoided the luxury tax. And so, any gallerist out there, you can do this and make connections with people in New York, make connections with it in LA, make connections wherever, and sell their art here. You could just be a housing company that handles this transaction, and it's a giant loophole in the
Oh,
system,
damn.
and it's perfectly legal, and millionaires and billionaires are using it all the time to bring great art to Portland. And that's one of the great things about being in Portland is you get to see amazing art because these billionaires and millionaires are using it
Mm.
to as a tax haven.
Whoa. Okay, I'm learning so many new
So
things.
if you want to start a gallery and you don't have to house anything, you just have to be like, hey, Goshen in New York, can I have that painting? We'll brokerage the selling from Portland, and you and your, whoever is buying it for 15 to $20 million can avoid luxury tax, and we'll take a 10% cut instead of a 15 or 20% cut, and we'll fund our gallery. So if anybody
Gosh.
wants that idea, please run with it. I've dedicated my life to other things now, but that is a perfect, valid, totally legal way to make a lot of money. And you just have to have some connections with major galleries in all the other
Oh
markets.
my gosh. Well, I hope people are taking notes on this pod because that sounds brilliant to me. Okay, so interesting.
So that's one
Yeah.
thing that's just amazing about
What
Portland.
else?
The other thing that is very inclusive, there's a lot of people of color, even though our population is
Mm.
small. There's a lot of great shows out there right now, especially anything that Carlo Rossi does. They're just making space for marginalized communities right now. The Nat Turner Project is amazing. If you don't know about them, go check them out. There are just so many people who are creating in this space, and there's a freedom to it that isn't pretentious, but that is just real and down to earth and ready to like engage with the viewer. And so I think those are the positive. The things that we can work on, we need more people who write about art. Art doesn't get any credit unless someone writes about it. And right now, like, we have podcasts and we have all these wonderful video things that are happening, but like art needs criticism. And every great art movement has had a great art critic that wrote about it and complained about it and like sharpened it and made it better. And that's the one thing I feel like we're lacking here in Portland. Not that we don't have great art critics, but they're just not enough, and they're not holding us to the fire as artists. And like, once you leave art school, you have someone at art school like holding you to a critique. You have a teacher, you have your classmates, and they're holding you to a certain standard. But once you're out of there and you put up a show, everybody thinks it's fantastic. But like, no, my show was great. I loved it. It was fantastic in an array, but like there's so many critiques that I needed from that show. Like, I can get all the pats on my back, but I need someone to be like, no, that's BS. Or no, hey, can you do this a little bit different? What if you thought about this to make me a better artist? And I just feel like we're lacking at the moment. And I feel like anybody could take up that mantle and just be like, okay, like I'm going to hold your feet to the fire, and I'm going to criticize this. And it's not out of hate, but it's just about making you a better artist and making the scene a better thing. The other thing is we need more venues owned by people of color. We need more curators of color. We also need to get away from the landscape. Portland is a very landscape community. If you want to sell paintings in any gallery, make a landscape, and you'll get it immediately. You'll probably get picked up. And here's another thing for Portland artists. Most of the galleries are already filled up with their selection of who they're going to represent. And so you're most likely not going to get represented by any of the galleries in Portland, the Pearl District area. So start with like the micro lofts on Everett Street, try to get in there. Go up to Seattle. Seattle has a lot of new money with Amazon, and they're looking to buy, and a lot of galleries are willing to represent you. So if you're willing to take a 3-hour drive to Seattle, you'll get a lot more face time with galleries and gallery representatives than you will with Portland. And so they're looking to like process you through quickly. If you're looking at figurative, go to San Francisco, jump into those loops and holes, go to Chicago, like put your name into those things. Like there's no reason why Portland's just really stagnant, because every gallery has like 14 or artists they represent. And so that puts them on a loop to always show those artists. And you might see those artists every year at the same time because they're on a loop. And so like there's no real new galleries. We have National, that's like the newest one. We have 100 Grand, that's amazing. We have Disjecta. We have the Portland Contemporary Institute of Art, which is fantastic. But like that, it's hard to get into those rotations. And so if people are opening up new spaces, if real estate agents want to open up like storefronts that are closed down right now, these are all great opportunities for people to inspire and create. Kaplan is a fantastic organization to help new artists, but like it's hard to get into like Elizabeth Leach, into Blue Sky, those mainstream ones. And so it always helps, especially as a starting artist, to start with a starting gallery.
Right.
And I gotta say, like Blue Sky and Elizabeth Leach are amazing. They're fantastic, and they put on some great shows. But like they're gonna stick with who they know and who they've committed to, right? And like they're not gonna take on necessarily a new person. So like if younger people can start making their own spaces and creating their own spaces, like we need that to show this art. And like that can't necessarily always be on the artist. We need some business mind person to jump in and be like, hey, I can foster this. I know the clientele. I can make this happen and make these connections. And so there's a lot of openings in the art world, especially in Portland, that like I don't think people are necessarily connecting the dots and being like, oh, I have a business degree, I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could open up a spot and like babysit some art and then talk to people that are rich and be like, hey, you should buy this for $5,000 because this person is this. This is what they're doing. It's going to increase in this time. And like I think as we connect more and more people and create more spaces in this place, to show art, to create art, to see art, I think it will only become better. And I'm not trying to like knock anybody at the top of their game in the Portland area. Like I love your spaces. I love going in and seeing the art. But like if we want younger people to come in, we need those transitional galleries
Mm-hmm.
to make that happen. Like in New York, there's a lot of transitional galleries. There's like the ones where you're just emerging, there's one mid-career, and then there's like the ones at the blue chip. And we just have, blue chip and then like starting out. And like we need some in between spaces. And and I think any city who is thinking about their city and where they want to be, like they need to think about supporting the arts, whether it's murals, whether it's like statues, whether it's anything that gets people to come. People are going to come for the arts.
Right.
Like a wall in Texas with angel wings, gets 100,000 visitors a year just because they want to get an Instagram photo. Like that brings hotels, that brings restaurant receipts, that brings bar receipts, that brings a ton of things to the community. And so if you can make a mural on a wall that gets people that want to take a picture with it, like you're going to support your local community even more. And so when we support the arts, we're supporting our local communities. And I think that is a big thing that Portland is slightly missing. Like we have the Forest of the Trees mural project. If you haven't seen that, it's amazing. It's all over downtown Portland. There's tons of murals that you can go and see. But like the more murals we get, the more it takes over. Like we have the Dame Dollar one across by Goodwill. We have, a ton all over Portland. And you can go on a tour during the summer when the Forest of Trees Festival happens, and you can see all these amazing murals. But like that brings people in.
Mm.
That brings, like, we have the Winter Light Festival that brings in 1 million people per year per previous pandemic. 1 million people into Portland spending
Yeah.
money. That's booking hotels. That's booking, restaurants. That's like going out and buying, keychains that said made in Oregon. Like these are things that support our community. And the more art we can get in, and the more that and it also stops vandalism. It also makes the community pretty and aesthetically pleasing, and it gets more people to want to live here. And so I think if we are truly focused on trying to make our community better, we support the arts better, and through that, everybody benefits,
Oh my
hopefully.
God. Well, I feel like I've just been schooled on this inside scoop of the visual art scene. I did not realize all of this business side of it. And I really appreciate you getting into the nitty-gritty of the business of it and the industry of it, because I feel like art on this podcast and in my worldview is much more abstract, much more creative, which it still is. But like these business conversations you're having and these ideas you're exploring are just as important to the future of art and the success of art. And like you're saying, just our whole community economy is benefiting from these things in a way that's kind of hard to quantify right away, but long term, these are the benefits.
Well, LA just dropped an initiative. There's a new brand of paint. It reflects the sun.
Ooh.
And so LA is hiring artists to paint murals on buildings with a special type of paint. And so it will help the energy saving for those buildings because they
Oh,
will reflect the paint and it won't absorb the heat, and it will make it easier to cool. And so like there is so many benefits
that's
to
way
this
cool.
that we're not necessarily thinking of, because normally think of art, you think of like it's a painting on a wall hanging someplace in a museum, but we're not thinking of like how does it actually make our society better. And then like especially as a teacher, like my whole goal is like I make socially justice art, but like I want to teach kids how to make a living for themselves, how to afford college, because like we haven't gone to a fully socialized society. We haven't
Right.
gone to robots taking over everything. So how do I like teach you practically like this idea of value is going to benefit your life? And like, you know, when you're 14, when you're 12, like whatever this crazy guy with a mustache right now for his COVID is saying to you might not hit you, but when he says, hey, we're going to make logos today and we're going to print them out and put them on t-shirts, and you could sell those t-shirts for $15, and we have, you know, we bought them at $3, look at your profit there. You know, you have a $12 profit that you could put into college, you could put it into whatever you want to do with your life. You know, you could buy a car, you could take someone out on a date. And so like trying to give them these practical ideas to like not only afford their lives that they want to have, but like make their lives whatever they want. And so like my art, like I don't think, like I've sold a couple pieces, but like I'm not trying to sell them. Like this is just for me and creating. But what I can give is what knowledge I have from, you know, 3 years in a business degree and being like, oh, this is sucking the blood out of everybody to, hey, let's make the world a better place. And like, let's try to take care of other people. Like, you know, I can use what I've known to like, hopefully not necessarily defeat the system, but make the system better.
Well, that is just a beautiful note for us to end on, Troy. Thank you so much for being here. I have learned so much today and just been so inspired by your perspective on art and just the detail with which you've thought about all of these questions we're asking on the pod. So I'm so glad that we could have you on.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a fantastic thing you're all doing, and I just want to encourage you to keep doing it.
Thank you. And Troy, where can people find you if they want to see some of your work? What's next for you?
I have a website called hyperaccumulator.com. I don't know if you know what a hyperaccumulator is. It's a project done by Mel Chen in 1995. He found that there's this plant called the hyperaccumulator, and you plant it in toxic areas, and it brings out all the toxicity in the space, and it makes the land rehabitable. And so it's a certain type of plant that can take out like nickel and copper and gold. And when you burn it, those minerals come out of it, but then the land can be replanted. And so that is my website, Hyperaccumulator, because I feel myself as a hyperaccumulator, someone who's planted into rough situation that like takes out all the negativity, makes something beautiful with their art, and then, you know, goes on to the next thing. And so you can see my art there. I have a couple ideas, hopefully. I don't know if you know about the Dear Moon Project. There's a billionaire taking a group of artists up to the moon on SpaceX capsule, whatever they call it. And so it's supposed to happen in 2023. I've applied. Today was the first round of typing in your information. Maybe that happens. I don't know. But, you know, I'm doing everything I can to get on that space shuttle to see what it looks like from a different perspective. And trying to tell my students that I'm doing it, whether it happens or not. Like my registration number is like 1,678. So there's a lot of people for 8 seats. But if that happens, I'd love to be on your podcast again and tell you about it. Oh my gosh,
yes. Well, okay. Well, look out for Troy at hyperaccumulator.com and or a trip to the moon. We will see if that's happening. Troy, thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure. And well, I guess we'll have to have you back on once you're Skyping in from space.
Anytime. Anytime. I plan on being your number one subscriber. So
thank you.
You will be with me while I grade papers and artwork.
Yes.
I'll be listening.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Creating Portland with me, Pearson Kunz. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Creating PDX, or on our website, creatingpdx.com. This podcast was brought to you by Wolf and Thunder Productions and Golden Pride Productions. See you next time. Bye!